All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first 2024 episode of the RotoViz Best Ball Show. Excited to be joined by Kevin Szafraniec. How's it going, Kevin?
It's awesome. We got a day off work, so couldn't be better.
Perfect. Yeah. You haven't done a ton of these Best Ball Mania drafts, but I am excited to jump into one now. Have you done several of these so far this year?
Yeah, it's just due to work schedule. I'm generally a slow draft guy, but I've done about 4 or 5 fast drafts so far. I think I'm up to 8 completed. So exposures are still working themselves out, but I like drafts this year, especially compared to like how ADPs shook out last year. We don't have to deal with all those quarterbacks in the first couple of rounds and everything. So I feel much more comfortable in draft rooms this year compared to last year.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into this, I think, as we're drafting. But one thing I've kind of found is that it's a lot easier this year, certainly, to get teams I like early on. I don't know if you've experienced as much of the kind of wide receiver avalanche that we had so much of last year in a lot of rooms. It's been easier, I think, to get some zero RB teams. Easier to get wide receivers that I like early. Does that kind of fit with your experience?
Yeah, but I also it's building zero RB teams has been fun this year, but I also found that the avalanche is still very real.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if you're not grabbing your wide receivers early, you're going to be left out in the cold. I have a few teams going right now where I try to deviate and try to do some hyper fragile or the bully tight end's been a lot of fun this year. But you still got to make sure your structures are right, or else I have a couple teams going right now that I'm kind of scrambling in the later rounds, double digit rounds, trying to get receivers on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting season. We kind of talked beforehand about, drafting from rankings, drafting from ADP. Obviously, my rankings up on the site are maybe a little bit different from ADP. I tend, when I'm going into these rooms, to ignore them, at least in the first couple rounds, just to make sure I'm not overexposed to any of my guys. But are you willing to kind of reach for guys even in the early rounds to get guys you want?
Yeah, absolutely. We were kind of talking, like you said, we were talking before the stream, and I generally try to get all the exposures to the guys at the top because they're all superstars. So
Yeah.
I know last year I was drafting Chris McCaffrey over Tyreek Hill most of the time, and that worked out pretty well for me. But for the most part, I'm maybe jumping by a pick or two.
Yeah.
I'm okay with, but as far as I'm not going to be jumping half around to grab like Puka Nakua in the top 4 or anything ridiculous like that. I'll just let those guys. I figure the exposures will kind of shake themselves out. But I'm happy getting. I like all the guys basically through Amon-Ra in ADP. I don't think there's really any sort of question. I'm happy to get any of those guys in any draft. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I've been playing it so far.
So do you have any guys in the early rounds that you are like avoiding, that you want zero exposure to? Say in like the first 3 rounds.
Jonathan Taylor, I have not been grabbing very much. I don't know. I mean, he's one of the favorite guys for the first couple of years.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, haven't looked into anything, but it seems like, going back to David Johnson, how he had that really bad ankle injury and that kind of just derailed him. That's kind of how I feel about Jonathan Taylor. And I don't know if it's substantiated or not. This is just me throwing things around in my head, but like, that's almost how I feel. He didn't look the same last year. And I don't know if he just needed another year to get back. But after he came back last year, he did not look like the guy that we saw the first couple of years of his career. So I don't want to be totally out on him. I don't want to be at zero, but he's not somebody I'm actively going after. That's for sure.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying on that. I mean, when Anthony Richardson was in last year, it looked like that had a chance to be kind of an exciting offense if he could do the rushing and if he was going to be throwing the ball a little better than we expected. So I mean, I can see a case to be kind of excited about Indianapolis, about what Taylor could do there, if they're able to put up points. But yeah, like you said, it seems like there's a lot of risk that maybe is not fully priced into his kind of early second round ADP. So
Mhm.
yeah, I pretty much agree on that.
I do think though that the one caveat is we didn't really get to see them together. So like if
That's true.
maybe that rising tide of Anthony Richardson's rushing ability lifts up Jonathan Taylor, regardless if he's still not the same player. Like that's the reason that I'm still not 100% fading him, because I think
Yeah,
there still is that possibility that if he's not efficient, he can still put up the numbers.
yeah, yeah. One of the biggest differences you mentioned already was how you're not having these early quarterbacks going in the third round anymore. You see Mahomes and Stroud and stuff in like the fifth round. Is this a scenario where you're comfortable grabbing these elite quarterbacks because they're maybe, a round or two cheaper than they were last year, or do you still prefer to wait till later to get quarterbacks?
And I've still been waiting for the most part. I'll get a little
Yeah,
bit of exposure to those guys. I don't know how if you're playing it the same way. I mean, there's a lot. The window is
yeah.
nice this year.
The window is nice.
Yeah.
What makes the window so nice, I think, is that it's kind of dead at the other positions when you get
Mhm. Oh
into
yeah.
like round 9, 10, 11. I mean, there are guys there that I like, there are guys I like in every round, but
Mhm.
it's harder to it's flatter there, so it becomes really attractive for quarterback picks, I think. But
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. In zero RB. The zero that's it's after like Christian Watson, it's just
Yeah,
a whole lot of RBs, whole lot of
for sure.
quarterbacks, and
For
that's
sure.
about it.
For sure. Well, you want to hop into a draft and we can kind of discuss
Yeah.
the specific players as we go along. I know we probably have a lot of agreement in terms of our specific targets, and um, we'll find out if we have any disagreement.
Yeah.
Let's see
Not
if I
very
can get
likely.
this up. All right. Yeah. And while we're waiting for this to fill,
We still got 9 people waiting, so hopefully it'll fill pretty quick.
yeah. The other thing that always is a big point of debate is the kind of the benefit of stacking, the benefit of game stacking. We obviously don't have the schedule out yet, but you can build kind of same team stacks. You can build some kind of inter or intra divisional stacks
Mhm.
rather. How big of a part does that play in your strategy?
I generally try to stack as much as I can when it makes
Yeah.
sense. I can tell you for sure the one that I'm having a hard time with is I've been drafting a lot of Jaden Daniels, and then Jahan Dotson comes up right after him, and I don't want to make that pick. I really don't.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much out on Jahan Dotson, but he's right there, and it's especially. I mean, I'm not really drafting much Terry McLaurin either,
Right.
so you're kind of left in that spot where it's like, do I go and draft Jahan Dotson? So within reason, I guess I'm not drafting him every single time. Sometimes I'm kind of passing up on him, hoping he maybe makes it back to me. But
Yeah.
I try to stack as much as I can. And then also
Yeah.
as far as like the you saying like interdivisional, I know I shared it with you, but I was pretty curious as to how those things worked out, and I just kind of went over the last 10 years, and there's about like a 10% chance of over the last 10 years of teams playing their divisional teams like in the last 3 weeks of the season. So I generally just try
Hmm.
to stack divisions when I can too, if it makes sense to do that.
Yeah.
It's more so as of like a tiebreaker as opposed to
Sure.
anything, because I mean the chances are still real slim that you're actually going to hit on like a week 17 correlation, but it's
Right.
worth a shot.
Right. And I mean, even if you don't get the week 17 correlation, you do get the, you get the regular season matchups, which could help score points, when you need to advance.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I was in a draft the other day where I had like a bunch of NFC East players and some other division and, breaking ties by saying, well, I don't have any AFC North guys on my roster, so let me just avoid that. That's kind of, I don't know how powerful that is, but it's like a way to kind of make the decisions easier in some cases
Yeah,
at the
that's
end
I
of
feel
drafts.
you maybe get some exposure to some guys that you ordinarily wouldn't.
Right, right. Yeah, we don't know the schedule. We do know, I guess, like which divisions are going to be playing against each other in kind of the other divisions. So
Mhm.
you can game that a little bit, I suppose, but I think the edge for the game stacking is, how do I say this? Sometimes I'm skeptical of it, but I think
Yeah.
it's not, like it is a tiebreaker is
Yeah.
basically how you should probably be approaching it, which is not to say don't do it, um, you should definitely probably be doing it, but definitely probably is kind of the key word.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Nothing more than really a tiebreaker. Because I mean, half the time it seems like the games that everybody thinks will hit don't hit. So
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Um, yeah, it's looks like are we filled
oh,
up here?
yeah, we're
There
at
we
the
go.
102.
102. Well, that makes things easy.
Mhm.
I was able to get Lamb at the 105 the other day, so that was kind of nice, but I'm happy to take him again here.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
I'm good with any of the top 5, really.
Yeah, that's
So,
generally how I'm
yeah, one thing we talked about a little bit before was also kind of about how, I think it's probably to do with how popular best ball has become, but um, there's more of a consensus forming around early ADP like this. And part of it is because guys want to get exposure to all of everyone, so it doesn't make sense to deviate from ADP when you're building a portfolio. Um, years ago when you would have people not doing such a high volume of drafts, probably when you're mostly talking about main event stuff, I think there was a more
oh,
discussion about, ooh,
so now the real question is, do you wanna go, excuse me, McCaffrey, or would you rather go Chase?
I think this is a good spot for McCaffrey.
Okay,
You only get the 101 or 102,
every once in a
you
while.
know, well, hopefully once every 12 times, but
Yeah.
still, I like McCaffrey there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was saying I think there used to be less of a consensus around who was the 101. You could argue about whether it should be Chase or whether it should be Jefferson or even down to someone like Brees Hall, Amon Ra, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And that's less the case these days. Do you think that's I mean, does that sound right? And do you think that's a kind of a sad thing about the fantasy industry?
I don't
Like
know, I
I
mean,
do.
I yeah. I mean, I think I've been conditioned by playing, but I've only really been playing best ball for about 2 years, and, uh
Mhm.
and I think I started getting conditioned over the past 2 years to follow the best ball ADPs into, like, my home leagues. So
Yeah.
so, I mean, I'm still willing to take
Yeah.
stands on my guys, but, I mean, just as far as best ball goes, just like kinda we said, getting exposure to all the guys at the top is generally the way I wanna play it because all of them have the chance to erupt and be superstars. But in my home leagues, I'm willing to take a little more chances because it's more fun.
Sure.
I'm not looking to make these cash out big in my home leagues. I'm just looking to have fun with my friends. So,
Sure. Yeah, and it's obviously a difference between building a portfolio of teams versus, you know, trying to take down one league, uh,
mhm,
like a friends and family league, or even like a main event.
yeah. I had one question for you. I saw you're not overly high on Brees Hall in your rankings, but he's another guy too. I mean, I want to get a lot of exposure to him, but I know a lot of people are not would pass up, Brees Hall for like Tyreek Hill, who I know is lower in both your and Sean's rankings. Uh,
Mm.
do you want to touch on Brees Hall a little bit because I'm
Yeah,
definitely interested.
I like Hall. If I have him lower than consensus, it's only because I probably have Amon Ra and maybe even Garrett Wilson higher than consensus.
Mhm.
So Brees Hall maybe gets pushed down a little, but I do think I Yeah, I mean, I would in a vacuum, I would take him ahead of Tyreek Hill
Hmm.
and a lot of other players there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see him in an Aaron Rodgers offense where everyone's healthy and he has kind of that full off season to get ready to go. I think he could be. I mean, obviously he's in the conversation already for
Hmm.
101 next
Yeah,
year.
I'm in the same boat. When it gets down to about pick 6 or so, between Jefferson, Amon-Ra, and Breece Hall, that's generally a pretty hard one for me. And then it's basically like, who do I feel like I have the least amount of exposure to if I need to get
Hmm.
it up with one of the other guys? But I love Breece Hall. I'll take
Yeah.
him everywhere if I can. But it's just, it'd be nice if we were getting him in the third round like we were last year. But
Yeah. Right. Yeah, he was. I'm sure one of my highest exposures last year.
mm,
Definitely, definitely want to get a lot of him this year.
so it looks like we're coming up pretty quickly. So
Mm.
as this go in one of my drafts recently on one of my cheaper ones, oh, there goes Kyron. Do you have
Uh,
any?
Kyron would have been interesting.
Yeah,
You
I,
know, um, Achan is probably not where.
yeah. These are the two guys that Neighbors and Achan are the two that I'm be most interested in.
Let's go neighbors.
Okay.
I like Achan, but I don't like chasing former zero RB guys up the board.
I know it's hard. It's especially when contests open. I don't generally play a lot of playoff stuff, so I'm still kind of anchored to last year's ADPs, and I'm like, oh, I got
Yeah.
Achan in the 10th, 11th round last year, and now I got to pick him at the 1-2 turn.
It's
So I'm coming.
it's yeah. I mean, obviously he's great. We
Mhm.
could go Achan. We could also go Sam Laporta
Yeah,
here. I think.
yeah, I was thinking Laporta as well. If
Let's
you
do
want to go,
Laporta.
okay.
Getting elite tight ends is my
Hmm.
favorite way to play this contest. I mean, somebody's getting a nice gift of HN in the third round, but
Yes.
even
And kind
that,
of
I
what I
think,
was alluding to is I'm generally hyper fragile isn't my favorite builds, but
yeah,
in one of the smaller contests, I did just start off with a McCaffrey, Kyron Williams, Achan start, and I was like, if I'm going to start out anyway, that's not a bad way to do a hyper fragile build.
yeah, for sure,
Now it's just chasing. Now it's how am I going to build out the rest of the roster?
yeah,
There you go.
yeah. 304 for HN. That's kind of nice value, but
Absolutely.
it's I mean, after they drafted Jalen Wright, still got Mostert on the roster. I think you've got to be a little cautious with him and him actually kind of paying off at this valuation.
Hmm. Yeah,
Which
I
is
kind
not
of
to
feel,
say he couldn't do it, but
yeah. And I don't, I mean, let's say a lot of those guys in the Miami, I don't know so much about Jalen Wright, but a lot of the guys in the Miami backfield are the other two, Mostert and Achan. Neither of them have been the pinnacle of health, even though we only have 1 year of data for Achan.
that's true.
So I'm not opposed to drafting any of the three right now because I feel like any week it could just be two of them, and none of those backs really look like they need a full workload. They can split time and still pay off.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I agree. Um, yeah, I think Wright is my favorite way to play it just because he's the cheapest. But yeah, I like all three of those guys. Seeing some quarterbacks go off the board in the third, maybe a little bit early than expected, but it's okay with me.
Mhm.
Are you generally drafting only two quarterbacks? Are you a three quarterback drafter?
Yeah, I try to just stick to two for the most part, unless
Yeah,
if I make it past the window. If I'm not drafting anybody until like the Baker range, even like Stafford, I think that might be the cutoff. Just
yeah.
off the top of my head, if Stafford's my QB1, I'm definitely looking to probably grab three.
Okay.
How about yourself?
Yeah, I generally I want to have a kind of a mix just because there is some data suggesting that three QBs is sometimes better in some cases. So,
Mm,
you know, I think probably more of my portfolio is going to end up on going to end up on a 2 QB build, but I do like getting 3, especially if I get like 2 elite tight ends. Then I might do a 2 tight end, 3 QB build. Like the other day, I was able to get Laporta and McBride on the same team, which is something I'm not opposed to.
Yeah, well, let's say that might. Hello, Mr. Segway. That might be
there we go.
coming up,
Yeah,
or
I
even
love.
Kincaid too.
That's right. Yeah, Kincaid is a good one too. I love getting these. I mean, last year was a year when there were a lot of high upside teams or a lot of high upside tight ends in the late rounds, and they've all, since kind of most of them hit, they've all moved up into the early rounds, and it really has left the later rounds pretty barren in terms of tight ends that you can expect to kind of take a big step forward and kind of break out and really propel your team to the playoffs and stuff.
Yeah. Do you have any preference? Is there any debate between Higgins or McBride if they both make it to us? Or
Well, they don't.
debate
I
canceled.
actually I actually would prefer McBride, I think.
Okay.
And let's see, just seeing who else is there. I mean, Kincaid is obviously a good one.
I feel like Kincaid does fall a little bit. I would go with McBride here.
Yeah, I would too.
Unless you want to chance
let's do
it.
McBride.
Okay, because I say we could chance it with a wide receiver here.
That's true. We could do. I mean, do you like any of these receivers? Pickens is a tough pick with Arthur Smith.
Yeah, down to Christian Kirk maybe, but I think we go with the guy that we want, the tight end we want, and grab one of the receivers that makes it back to us.
Yeah, that sounds good. I do like Pickens. I like Keenan Allen. I would have liked him more before the Dunze pick.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
It seems like the biggest thing in Chicago really is Shane Waldron. I don't think it's anything to do with any of the talent. It's just more of what is he going to do? Is he going to be Seattle Shane Waldron, or is he going to? I mean, not to say the Rams were Shane Waldron, but was he going to bring more of that to the table?
Yeah, right.
So I would say either Pickens or Allen.
I don't hate reaching for Worthy here, honestly.
Worthy, as he creeps in.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Just makes it to the bottom of the screen. That's I think when you have to draft him, when he's in view.
Yeah, so that's where you want to go?
Well, he's definitely not going to come back. So if we want him, we should probably get him here.
Yep. As we have our all rookie wide receiver core.
All right.
Better be a generational class, right?
That's right. I mean, Worthy, now even by ADP, he's the wide receiver 1, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
In Kansas City, yeah. Barely.
Yeah. So I know I just wrote him up for the site, and I had more of a supercharged Mecole Hardman sort of valuation on him. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like he can reclaim like a deep role? Because I know they used it in the sophomore season. He didn't really excel in that role, but at the same time, there was also extenuating circumstances to maybe why he didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, his profile is pretty tricky to evaluate from that perspective. He did kind of underperform in that deep role. I think there might have been an injury having to do with that. I mean, when you look at his freshman season, you just can't help but get excited. Yeah, so I mean, supercharged Mecole Hardman sounds like maybe underselling what he could probably do in some ways. I mean, you have Andy Reid comping him to Deshaun Jackson, which I guess, you kind of think of Deshaun Jackson as like, oh, he's just a deep threat with, he'll get a few targets a game and maybe score a long touchdown. But I mean, he put up some pretty big seasons early in his career. Yeah, I mean, he's obviously not quite the same body type as Tyreek Hill, but I think anyone who can get behind the defense in a Patrick Mahomes offense should be able to put up some big points. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, same. I guess, calling him a supercharged Mecole Hardman, because even they use Mecole Hardman as a deep threat in his first couple of years. I mean, his ADOT was deep, and then they just kind of pulled back the reins on him. So I guess that's more of my
Yeah.
stance on is like what McCole Hardman could have, or I guess could have been if if he excelled in the role that they want him to be in, but he just never really lived up to it.
Yeah. I want to get your take on this comment from Bill. What do you think of Pittman's price?
I've been drafting him because I do like Richardson this year, and I know
Yeah.
that if Ben Gretsch has done some things about the RPOs, and that basically the wide receiver ones are generally going to get a lot of those targets because once you get away from the run, you pretty much have your one option. So I've been drafting him. I don't think he's great, but I as far as stacking goes,
Yeah. He's a guy that I didn't have a lot of exposure to last year, and I don't think I will this year either. Not that I'm like, going out of my way to avoid taking him, but I mean, they drafted Adonai Mitchell, who I thought was a pretty good prospect. I think Josh Downs is underrated too, so
Mhm.
I'm definitely below consensus on Pittman.
Yeah. I mean, and I get that too. He's not a very sexy pick, but the volume has generally been there. Like I drafted a good amount of him last year where he was a little more depressed in ADP, and this year 3 in the third round, it's not as easy of a click for me.
Yeah.
So I did add Addison to the queue. Is there anybody else here that you're interested in?
No, I think the pick is Addison here. I'm just got to be prepared for
Yeah. I guess
the turn because it comes around quick.
yeah. I so go with that. And I guess my next, assuming he makes it back to us, I would assume JSN it would be my pick. I don't know if you have anybody else you'd want
Yeah,
to
I love
jump on.
JSN. Love JSN. I'm not drafting a ton of McConkey or Keon Coleman, but I don't. I mean, it's hard to when JSN's there.
Mhm. Is
Yeah,
that the pick?
I'm good with JSN here for
And
sure.
this is what I feel like a bully tight end draft should look like,
Exactly.
as opposed to
Oh, with
some of the ones that I've done that don't look like
right.
this.
This looks a lot like a lot of teams I have. Only instead of McCaffrey, it'll be like Tajay Spears.
Mhm. And I say I'm never opposed to getting Christian McCaffrey on my teams.
Yeah.
If we were sitting at 5 wide receivers and two tight ends, I wouldn't feel considerably better or worse about it. So
Right. No, I definitely like this start.
mhm. So how you feel? Are you drafting Rashee Rice? Are you just more skeptical now because of his legal situations, and especially even more now coming out?
Yeah, I mean, I still want to take him this year. I think you just have to be really price sensitive because there's obviously a lot of risk. I suspect his ADP might keep falling a little bit. Like if I could get him in the 8th or ninth round, that would be probably ideal. Um, yeah, I guess I'm not. I think his ADP might even keep falling from here, and
Yeah,
have to kind of see where it settles. I don't want to have 0% exposure. Of course, in a lot of pre-draft stuff, I have him in the 3rd round, so that's no good.
yeah, that's kind of. I mean, I think I had him in the second when they opened up. He was going middle of the second, I want to say, and I was
Yeah,
a little taken back by that. But like I said, it's also me anchoring to last year's ADPs, especially. I remember the pre-draft ones. I was getting Rice in a lot of like 19th, 20th rounds
yep,
last year,
yep.
and I had big exposure to him. And then having to draft him at the middle of the second was it hurt a little bit.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah, it's tough. He was a guy that I was definitely excited about coming into year 2. And you can even see ways in which them drafting Worthy would help him a lot in that offense and kind of open
Mhm.
things up for him. So, yeah, kind of a bummer.
Looks like so we've officially kind of gotten out of our wide receiver. I guess Deontay Johnson's there. Uh, I know Curtis just wrote up a really good piece on the site about Deontay Johnson. Is he somebody you're targeting at all?
Probably not at this price. I mean, Curtis wrote that before they drafted Leggett, so
That's
that
true.
adds some. That's kind of a complicating factor. Not that I think Leggett is, in terms of like his prospect profile, he's someone I was lower on, but he is very athletic. His final season was really good. So, probably that's the way I would actually prefer to play Carolina. I mean, honestly,
Mhm.
I'm not drafting a lot of Carolina receivers.
No, I have been. I'd say I give Leggett probably like a 25 to 33% chance of succeeding, but I have been drafting him.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, he's in those later rounds, his upside is enough to give him a
Yeah,
shot,
right.
at least in my opinion.
Right, for
Um,
sure.
Heading back, we're about what 5 picks away. Yeah, any interest in Kyler here to stack with McBride, or you want to keep pushing QB?
No, I do like Kyler here. I think that's a good pick if he makes it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would be definitely happy with that. I think we were just talking about Carolina, but I think Brooks could be a good pick here too,
Hmm.
as someone who might, you know, if he's going to be catching passes uh, for a pretty bad team, that's often a kind of a good recipe for a lot of
Hmm.
running back targets.
You'd be looking at Brooks over. We take Brooks over Warren in most cases, or even Benson, who's a little bit further down.
Um, ooh, Brooks and Warren is close. I really like Warren this year.
Hmm.
I probably would take them both over Benson,
Okay, let's
but I
see.
think if Kyler falls to us, he's
Oh,
the
yeah,
pick.
yeah.
Yeah, let's do that because there are some running back options that you can
Hmm.
wait 3 picks for.
Now, do you think there's any reason that Arthur Smith just hates fantasy players so much that he just gives Najee Harris 400 carries this year?
I mean, yeah, I actually don't
Nope.
hate Najee's price this year. Like
Neither do I.
I have been drafting him on a few teams. I still prefer Warren, but
Yeah.
um,
So
with Arthur Smith, anything could happen
yeah, Warren the pick here.
except for what you want. Yeah, I like Warren here.
Okay. Yeah, pretty much. And so that's another segue. So I had a lot of Pat Fryermuth last year, and I have
Hmm.
not been drafting him at all because it's just it hurt me pretty badly. And I don't know. I mean, for tight ends not named Kyle Pitts, Arthur Smith has actually been pretty good with, and going even back to like Delaney
Right.
Walker with Tennessee. What's your view on Fryermuth this year? Because I need somebody to make sure that I'm just not like a jaded ex-girlfriend.
Oh man, I'm kind of in the same boat as you where he left a bad taste in my mouth a little bit, so I haven't been drafting a lot of him. But um, if he's less Kyle Pitts and more Jonnu Smith, then I guess he's the kind of guy Arthur Smith would like.
Mhm.
I don't know about that. Maybe we should be drafting Darnell Washington.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Our next pick's coming up at 119. I know who I would like there. Do you have anybody off the top of your head?
I
Or as
mean,
far as our build?
I think we could get another quarterback there
Mhm.
if the guy I'm thinking of, maybe it's
Amen.
the same guy you're thinking of.
Yep, I'm sure it is.
All right. We'll see. Hopefully nobody's listening and paying close enough attention to know who we mean, although I'm sure they are.
Okay. And as of right now, so we're in through 9 rounds. We're sitting at a 1-2-4-2 build. So, this is
Ooh,
where I kind of this is where there he goes,
yeah,
which isn't surprising. I mean, Daniels has been going earlier and earlier. I'd draft him earlier than this a lot of the time. So,
right.
um,
I mean, it's so dependent on the room. You get in some rooms where quarterbacks just fall, around past ADP, and then some where they're pushed up. So this one is a more quarterback happy,
mhm,
more aggressive with the QBs, it seems.
yeah. So, and I say I've gotten into rooms like this is kind of what I was talking about is when you do these bully tight end builds, sometimes you only end up with 4. I'd be
Oh
happier, much
yeah,
happier with like 6 wide receivers right now, but especially with the people that we have coming up, there's nobody that's really super exciting.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, my lean even now, especially after having McCaffrey and liking Warren, was maybe like maybe draft another running back and stick to 4 or 5 total. I mean, we wouldn't be super opposed to doing hyper fragile with McCaffrey as anchor, because if our team's going to succeed, he's going to have one of those. Probably going to have one of those great seasons like he did last year. So,
Right.
is there any leanings that you have right now?
Yeah, I'm certainly not opposed to a running back here. I think there are a couple interesting names coming up that I like. With McCaffrey, you can get away with, even if he's your only early running back, you can get away with only 5, for instance. So, yeah, I have a name in mind that hopefully will get there that I think would be pretty interesting,
Okay.
and it's Chase Brown.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there's, I don't, so that's one of the things, I've heard Sean talk a lot, especially on the streams that he's done with Pete, about Chase Brown. Do you think he's going to end up being the number one, or you think it's going to be a straight up committee between him and Moss?
Yeah, it might start as a committee, but I think Moss was fine last year, but I think Brown offers a lot more. He's more dynamic.
Yeah, I was never
runner.
really a true believer with
Right.
Zach Moss last year.
Right.
I mean, even looking at his efficiency, and there was he had like really one good game where he was efficient and did really well, and the other ones were just kind of so. I don't remember the specifics of it, but I remember looking at it like, I remember him being a lot better than these stats say that he was.
Right. Yeah, that's true. He scored points, but he did it in kind of an inefficient way. And Brown looked really good last year. He was a pretty good athlete coming out of college, really productive at Illinois.
Yeah. Yeah, he was one of my guys last year too, the late round guys, but he just didn't really. I mean, when he got on the field, he looked good, but he didn't really get on till late.
Right, exactly.
So the two guys here, Brown or Spears, are the two that I would be looking at, unless you have somebody else in mind.
No, I think that's where I would go to, and have Brown ahead of Spears slightly. So hopefully Spears will get back, and if we end up with those 4 running backs, I think that's a pretty good crew that we would only need to add.
Yeah, but it's just
two.
It's definitely not in my comfort zone having 4 running backs or 4 wide receivers through 11 rounds. That's the one thing.
Sure.
Like,
yeah, for sure. I mean, well, you want to just take Spears here? There's no wide receivers that
a lot of sad names.
I know. It's like
I do like. I mean, this is, if I was feeling very risky, I could roll with these 4 guys. I don't feel great about it, but if it came down to it,
right. Yeah, I agree. I think we can probably add one more, but
yeah, I do too.
But if we don't, then I
think 5 would be the ideal build. But it'd say, if we were just sticking with these 4 guys, I didn't feel like I would automatically be throwing away $25.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, this is a real dead spot for wide receiver. I think maybe adding another quarterback in the next round is a good idea. But I do think receiver gets a little bit more interesting in the later rounds again. So
I do have, as far as the Seattle quarterback competition, I know that they've stated publicly that Geno Smith is their starter.
Yeah.
But are you playing it by drafting either of those guys? Because I'm having a hard time, even though I have a good amount of Seattle players, I have not been drafting the quarterback to go with any sort of stack.
Yeah. I mean, I think on a 3 QB build, you can draft either of them probably. But my preference would be to draft Howell in those cases.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just don't have the faith, especially with the new coaching staff coming in. It's just like, are we going to anchor to Pete Carroll, who's set in his ways, and we'll probably start Geno Smith over any new quarterback, or are we going to,
Yeah.
take into account that this new coaching staff traded for Howell? They might just like Howell more straight out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know. It's tough because neither of them looked great last year, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
we kind of know what Geno Smith is. I think there's a chance Howell wasn't necessarily in the best position to showcase his true talent. So I'd be pretty interested in seeing him in a new offense, and hopefully they give him a chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm feeling the same. I said, I'm still holding my Howell shares in Dynasty, so I actually just
Exactly.
picked them up on a team that I think in like the third or fourth round, somebody dropped him into the FFPC rookie draft, and I'm like, I'm going with it. I already have Metcalf and JSN on that team, so I'm just playing for the future, hoping that he gets a shot.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you never root for injury, but
Mm-hmm.
you can maybe, I guess, root for Geno Smith just not being that good and Howell becoming the starter.
Mm-hmm.
But
And I
there are a
think
lot
by
of
the end,
paths for him to
yeah.
get on the field.
And I said, yeah, if we see him hit the field this year and he does the same thing he did last year, then I think we can, close the book on Sam Howell. But it was a fun ride, at least for 8 weeks of 2023,
Yeah.
or however many weeks he actually played really well.
Now, just looking at the quarterbacks that are coming up, we don't have any of their receivers on our team.
Yeah, I know we don't really have any stackable options
Unless we wanted to
unless
wait
we kind
and
of
go
wait.
with McCarthy or something.
Yeah, I mean,
Or
I
Daniel
wouldn't be
Jones,
opposed to
yeah.
a 3 QB build with those two guys.
Okay.
Um, let's say how do you feel? So I know that some people are, Daniel Jones is really cheap this year. And I knew that he finished the season on IR last year, but I couldn't
Yeah.
remember what his injury was. I thought maybe it was like a shoulder or an ankle or something like that. And then when I looked into it, I found out he tore his ACL, which
Yeah.
I obviously knew at some point. But so do you think that's going to cap his rushing ability at all this year? Like I'm thinking like 75% the rushing that we're used to seeing from Daniel Jones, as opposed to he's just going to,
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I've been playing it.
Yeah, that's possible. I think that's maybe baked into his price a little bit after they had a
Yeah.
receiver like Neighbors. You'd expect him to get a pretty decent bump, and
Mm-hmm.
he did to a certain extent, but still I think is too cheap for kind of the weapons they have in that offense.
Mm-hmm. So any of these wide receivers here really tickle your fancy?
So I like Pearsall, I like Franklin, I like probably one of those two.
Okay. So I guess even though it's not a true stack, we could go Pearsall with McCaffrey, or
Yeah.
or I would say we could also do the jump of well, we're running out of
Yeah,
time.
we could
So
do Franklin. Well, how about we if we can get them both, then we
yeah.
can
Oh yeah.
also talk about
True.
a late Denver quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Especially with Mims. Yeah, Mims
Yep. Yep.
coming through. Let's see.
This is the all rookie. Stick
Oh
with our
yeah.
all rookie wide receiver
Mm. Oof.
build.
In
If we,
second year. I mean, that's not a bad bet to place.
yeah,
And
yeah, let's get Franklin.
okay. So I know that Sean's 101 series, that was awesome, but I think my favorite article of his this offseason was the Bo Nix piece, because I was not on Nix whatsoever. I was
Mhm.
fading him pretty much completely, except for like in super flex drafts, like the pre-draft super flex drafts, and I would get
Yeah.
them if I ran out of quarterbacks. But I mean, that article like changed my mind. It flipped it completely, and now I'm like, Bo Nix is the late round guy that I am
Right.
definitely targeting. Um,
Yeah.
but that's just something that I just figured. Oh, he wasn't good at Auburn, and he's the Oregon system, and blah blah blah. Just all these preconceived notions in my head. But when you look at those numbers, he was actually pretty good.
Yeah, he was. He was. I mean, there are a lot of red flags, I think, not only
Yes.
his, kind of his underperformance for most of his or much of his college career and his age and all that stuff.
Mhm.
Arm strength, maybe, I don't know, but it's hard to not get excited when you read an article like that and see those numbers. I
Yes.
drafted him in a rookie draft for a 1 QB dynasty league where I already had Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence and Tua.
Oh, I did draft him, same, but I just had Burrow, but, I mean, he fell to me in the 3rd round, so I was kind of upset. I had the 201 in one of my drafts, and I was trying to play the field and look at the teams around me, and I had the 201 and 205, and I passed on him at 201 thinking that he wouldn't get picked and I picked Jonathan Brooks instead, and then he went, or maybe it was the 112, but regardless, one pick after I, was trying to push it and be sneaky. He went, and I was so upset.
Where's his ADP in these drafts? I haven't even looked close enough to
I
see
don't know
where
if
he's
he's even
usually
getting
going.
drafted in every single one. 208,
Yeah,
so one of the last picks.
right. Like I'm looking on in the RotoViz Underdog ADP app, and he's not even listed on like the ADP draft grid, so not one of the top uh 200 whatever picks.
Mm.
Not
Yeah,
240,
208. So,
something less than that.
yeah. And I say I haven't been really, I haven't been jumping. I think he's going to have a round pick.
Yeah,
You can't really argue with that.
right.
Although this is coming from the guy who was drafting a lot of Desmond Ritter last year. So take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Let's see. Coming up on the 14th.
So as far as, is there any, I mean, I would think to go, probably Mims would be my pick here if he makes it to us. Do you have any other preferences as far as wide receiver goes, or do you want me to open it up to show other positions?
No, I like Mims here if he makes it.
Okay.
I think he's definitely the top pick. We can wait probably on some of the quarterbacks we were talking about, and there are
Mhm.
some pretty interesting running backs in the later rounds too. So I like
Yeah,
getting Mims here.
absolutely. Do you think Jaleel McLaughlin is he somebody that you're drafting now after after the Broncos drafted Estime, or is he
Yeah,
somebody?
I'm still on McLaughlin. I wish he had kind of gotten cheaper even than he did. Um,
Mhm.
Estime's combine was a pretty big disappointment to people who were excited about seeing what he could do. So, uh, I don't know how much that'll end up mattering, but it
Yeah.
did kind of make me less worried about Estime. I think the guy that they picked up as a UDFA, Blake Watson, is pretty interesting though. So
Mhm.
I like him a lot.
Mims the pick here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And then
But I know the one thing with Sean Payton is Payton definitely knows how to use running back, so I'm not really putting a ton into
yeah.
metrics or so now we actually
Right.
do have H with 20 seconds. Is there any way like a Bucky Irving, is he interesting to you, or do you want to do McLaughlin to just keep rolling with these Broncos stacks?
Oh yeah, Bronco stacks. I think I would go Bucky.
Okay. See if I can get him
Um,
real quick.
I think I would also
Yeah.
consider
Well, he's
McCarthy here, but he might
yeah.
he might make
I
it
think
back.
yeah. So we got Bucky. So we should be pretty much set at running back. And I see, even I mean at the end of the day too, if even if McCarthy doesn't make it back to us, we can always go. We still have the Denver option, we have the Seattle option, and the Giants option. So it's not like
Yeah.
and I think all things being equal, I would probably almost rather have not say proven commodity, but we know what we're getting in Jones or perhaps Howell as opposed to McCarthy. Like, yeah, he could probably be good, but he could also not be.
Yeah. Right.
All right, so we're done at
Here's a
running
good
back.
question. Why does Franklin go so far ahead of Mims? Do you have a take on this?
I honestly I prefer Mims, so I'm right there with you. I don't know. I mean, because he's the shiny new toy, the shiny new toy syndrome. I don't know. I
That's
mean, I prefer
probably
Mims.
that's probably a good reason for it. I mean, Franklin was a guy who, you know, before the draft, people were talking about him as like a first or second rounder in the reality draft.
This guy right here wrote in one of his. I had him going to Kansas City in the one super early
There you go.
article I did about Kansas City. So
There
I'm
you
one of those
go.
guys.
Yeah, I mean, he's an exciting player, obviously a good player in college at Oregon, reuniting with his college quarterback. There are definitely some good reasons to be excited about Franklin, but yeah, Mims also I think should have a pretty big season. I like both of those guys.
Yeah.
I like them both better than Sutton.
Do you think their success is like mutually exclusive, or do you think both of them could actually
No.
produce this year?
Yeah, I definitely think they can both produce. I think you have to kind of temper expectations for what that offense will be able to do, even for as high as we are on Nix and Franklin and Mims. Um, I don't know that I'd say Denver's going to go out and you know, be like Kansas City or something.
No.
But
I mean, do you think they could be? I
at
mean,
these
obviously,
prices, for
yeah.
sure, they can both uh, return
Do
value.
you think
So
there's any chance they could be New Orleans light? Obviously, Knicks isn't Drew Brees, but I mean, they were
yeah,
productive across the. I mean, they produced. They had wide receivers that produced. They had running backs that produced. Tight ends that produced.
yeah,
Like,
they did. I mean, I think that's probably a good comp. And I mean, one thing about a lot of those New Orleans teams is that they didn't have maybe one dominant receiver apart
hmm
from those few years that Michael Thomas was the guy. But
hmm well, Jimmy Graham at tight end, but as far as
yeah,
if you're
right,
talking
that's
about the
true.
receivers in general, uh,
Yeah,
even
the
go
the
back to
pie was
Marquez
more
Wilson,
evenly split in a lot of
yeah,
those offenses. So yeah, I don't know. Does it cap the upside for Franklin and Mims? Maybe a little bit, but that's a bummer on McCarthy. I think we probably ought to take Knicks in the 17th
okay.
if we
Let's see what,
want to get him.
yeah. So the guy in between it, the guy at the the one spot has two quarterbacks already,
Yeah,
so should be good out there.
yeah. We could do like Daniel Jones Knicks here.
Yeah, we still got Drake May here too, even though we don't have any stacking. I don't know if any of these guys have more appeal to you.
Right. We don't have any Pittsburgh guys, do we?
Yeah,
Fields is someone I
no.
like, but probably doesn't make sense here.
hmm
I think
You know,
Jones and Knicks are the way to go.
well, the other thing too is we have Wandale and then Hyatt at the end. Would you
Right.
rather fill out our Giants build with Wandale and then swing around with Jones here?
The only reason probably not is because I think Hyatt is
Okay,
about the same bet as Wandale.
okay,
And
cool,
yeah.
cool. So we go with
Um
Daniel Jones here.
yeah, unless you think we could get Wandale and get Knicks on the way back. I mean, what
Nope.
I'm looking at,
The
I
last
think
pick of the second to last pick of the draft is what we're looking at. Do we want to be do we want to be risky today, or are we playing it safe?
right, I don't know. I think I was looking at the wrong draft grid because now I see him at 18
Oh, Wandale just went too.
1805.
Uh-huh.
So, there goes Wandale.
Yeah, but I
Um
mean Hyatt, I'm cool with too. I like Hyatt a lot. I think he's better than what he's definitely better than
yeah.
an 18th round pick.
Since we have the Denver guys, let's get Knicks here,
Yeah.
and then we can make a decision on our last pick when it
All
comes up.
right. Well, there's my guy. even though we don't have any stackable options with him. McMillan still somebody that he was my highest owned player in pre-draft outside
Yeah.
of a running back that doesn't make sense anymore, which I'm not going to name. But but McMillan, I mean, I don't know if I think I should be out on him, but I mean, I just like him. He was my guy in the staff planting your flag guy, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm good with McMillan. I think
Uh,
we do have Bucky Irving, so it's
oh,
not exactly a stack, but it's maybe a little correlation if they play well.
yeah. I think
Um,
Hyatt's definitely my choice if he does make it back to us, though.
yeah,
And
I would
otherwise, I
agree.
mean, I'm pretty set as far as wanting another wide receiver here.
Yeah,
Uh, are you
yeah,
in the
for sure.
same boat?
Yeah, yeah, and Hyatt would be my pick if he makes it.
Okay.
I do like Malik Washington a little bit, but he maybe is
Even with the
not the
OBJ,
best.
you think you think OBJ's gonna box him out at all, or
I don't know, not really. I mean, I'm kind of a Baltimore native.
oh,
Uh, not exactly, but live around Baltimore. But I'm convinced that the only reason he signed with Baltimore last year was to convince Lamar Jackson to resign. Once they got that wrapped up, they were like, "Oh, we don't actually want you on the field." What do you think of this? Can you take a Giants tight end?
Mm. I've especially in Dynasty, I've thought about it. I, Bellinger did have a decent rookie season before they brought Waller in. I wasn't like totally off of him. I
Yeah,
think early in the pre-draft stuff last year, I think I was actually taking a decent amount of them in the late rounds. Theo Johnson's, I mean, the size speed stuff, I usually don't fall for that as much, but I mean, the guy's a beast. And even watching highlights, even though those can play tricks on us, like his highlights are awesome
yeah,
as far as just being this big guy that's lumbering down the field. So, I mean, last round to complete a stack, why not take a shot? It
yeah,
could be the pick that pays off where, you get an 18th round tight end that has a boom week in the playoffs, and he's probably not going to be highly owned.
yeah.
Are you,
No, yeah, I would agree on that. I think you take a shot on Theo Johnson just for the athleticism. I mean, he wasn't the most productive guy in college. Probably, I think he ran fewer routes than even some other tight ends on Penn State's team. But
Mhm,
but yeah, in terms of just his upside, I think that's the way to go in the final round.
mhm. Yeah, I don't know for sure what Bellinger's profile. I think he's more of like a blocking guy, but I mean, I could be 100% wrong on
Seems like
that.
it. Yeah, I think
I
he
just remember seeing his
probably.
name on some stat sheets and way back in 2022, I think was his rookie year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right.
There goes
I think so.
McMillan. We're winding up. Oh, somebody took Slayton over Hyatt. Do you think
I
there's
know.
any comparison between those two guys? Because I sure don't.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, Slayton's another guy that we kind of know what he is. Somebody who's going to get open deep a lot and then drop the ball. Rasheen Ali, what do you think of him?
I put it bluntly, I don't know enough about him to really have a good opinion. I don't believe. How about you? I mean, you did a lot more deep diving for the rookie guys.
Yeah, he was actually the class leader in backfield dominator rating. Super productive. Final season at Marshall, he also had another. I think his sophomore season was really good, and then he was injured for his junior season. So, not a complete kind of production profile. I guess the concern with him when you're thinking about, I don't know how he compares to like Keaton Mitchell for instance, who another guy Baltimore picked up last year,
Mhm,
um, is that he just doesn't have the speed and athleticism of a guy like Mitchell. So
mhm.
from that perspective, I'm a little more skeptical of him actually making an impact. I think I'm much higher on Mitchell in that offense. Uh,
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say even though he's coming back off the ACL,
Right.
he let's see, look at our. Oh, that's not it. Where is it? Where did it go? We just this actually had 8 before we started, so maybe it isn't loaded
Yeah,
yet.
it hasn't populated yet.
So I guess screwed the pooch on that one. We can't look
That's
at
all
our
right.
draft.
Let's see if we can remember. It was a McCaffrey draft, Malik Neighbors, Laporta, McBride, Worthy. Then I forgot.
Yep. Blame it on the noob, man. Blame it on the noob.
It's all good.
He gets all
It's all
click happy.
good.
But
Well,
yeah,
we were, yeah.
I was happy with it. That's probably one of my, an ideal build for what I like to do.
Definitely. It had the flavor of a 0 RB build, but you still get McCaffrey in there. I think we also ended up with Addison because we wanted McCarthy late and didn't end up getting him. Got the Denver wide receivers.
Oh, there we go. I think
to pair with Bo Nix. We got some Giants, Hyatt. Obviously, Neighbors. We said to pair with Daniel Jones. We did end up getting Jalen Warren on this squad.
Yeah, Chase Brown, Tajay Spears.
Chase Brown. Yep.
So,
and Bucky Irving.
Yeah, I think just across the board. I mean, receivers were a little sketchy-ish, sketchier than I feel comfortable with. I think we had 4 through 11 rounds or something like that, and I get a little squirrely when I see that, but
yeah,
I think it shook out really well.
Yeah, it's always kind of tricky when you don't, if you're gonna take a running back and you're gonna take the 2 elite tight ends, then you kind of are accepting that you're gonna be a little weaker at those wide receiver spots. But I do think we got some guys that some high upside bets on some later wide receivers.
I especially like
the other guy we got.
Yeah, Pearsall, but those 2 Denver guys too. I mean, either those could be, both. I mean, I don't know if they'll be consistent producers, but for best ball, I mean, either of those guys could have the spike weeks at any given moment, especially, I mean, obviously with Franklin, maybe it might take him a little while to get going.
Yeah.
But I mean, those are the type of guys that you want for the playoffs. If we advance through, I mean, those are the stacks, especially if Nix hits. I mean, that could be sneaky good.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, ideally that offense is like you said, New Orleans West or something. And we end up with some really high upside guys that we got in the 13th, 14th round. That would be ideal. Yeah, I think I'm pretty excited about this team.
Yeah. And when we actually can see who's on it, I'll send you a screenshot. So you know.
It was like McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson,
I'll see.
Brees Hall team, right?
Yeah.
Auction.
Yep. No, we're still not there yet. So
that's all right.
Yeah, overall, I don't know. I don't think I would have really done it any different. I mean, I wish Daniels would have fell to us, but at the same time, I mean, I think the picks that we made at that point were the right picks to make, especially with
Now, had we taken Daniels, Daniels, like you said at the beginning, he's kind of a tricky pick in a way, because when you're looking at guys to stack with him, obviously there's nobody early who makes sense. So you're looking at taking some late shots on. There we go. You're looking at taking some late shots on guys like Dotson, guys like Luke McCaffrey, Ben Sinnott. If you need a tight end anyway, what's your preferred way to play the Commanders?
Usually I've been going Sinnott and McCaffrey. I mean, I don't know if McCaffrey's skill set meshes well with Daniel's skill set, but he's just the cheapest one.
Right.
And then, I mean, I've been drafting a lot of Brian Robinson Jr. I think Eckler is, I think he's pretty much just dust. I don't think that didn't really move the needle for me more than just a name and pushed Robinson down a little bit. So I was happy that they signed Eckler and
Yeah.
still grabbing my shares of Robinson.
Yeah, I agree. I probably should have a little exposure to Eckler just because, I mean, there's a chance that coaching staff just splits the roles pretty evenly.
Hmm.
Um, in a lot of Kingsbury seasons, he's had a dedicated pass catching back and a dedicated rushing, early down back. So that's the one thing that kind of gives me pause, but I haven't been drafting a ton of Eckler.
Hmm. Yeah,
I don't think I've drafted any yet, in fact.
neither. I mean, probably should get on that just to. But
Yeah,
honestly,
just
I
in
mean,
case.
I mean, there's generally not many guys that I'm at 0% exposure to, and the post draft. I knew I'd have a little bit of Eckler in the pre draft stuff, but he's one
Yeah.
of those guys. He could be my 0%. I don't
Yeah.
think unless he falls, like I feel like he should be 15th, 16th round guy, not a. I mean, I think he's going before Robinson. I don't know if
He
that's
is,
100%
yeah.
true, but
Yeah.
I mean, I would never take him there. He seems like one of those guys at the end that's like, oh, he's a boring pass catching guy. In my perspective, I mean,
Yeah.
always could be wrong on those sort of things. Maybe he comes out and scores 10 touchdowns and catches 75 passes this year and makes me look stupid. So,
Yeah. I mean, anything could happen, I guess. But yeah, that is a high upside offense that you want exposure to in any case. So
mhm.
all right. You want to
Mhm.
recap our team here?
Yep. So we did a 3-5-8-2 build. At quarterback, we had Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, and Bo Nix. Running back, we had Christian McCaffrey, Jalen Warren, Chase Brown, Tajay Spears, Bucky Irving. Wide receiver, Malik Neighbors, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Addison, JSN, Pearsall, Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims Jr., Jalen Hyatt, and at tight end, Laporta and McBride. So, I mean, I like it.
I love it. I love
It's
it. Awesome. Laporta and McBride are going to be on so many of my teams this year, like
mhm.
together. They're
Yeah,
just
that's why I'm
in
trying to, because I'm doing
perfect
so
spot.
much bully tight end. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not doing the same ones over and over again. Like
Yeah, I know.
it's, but that is, I don't really see any other way to play. Well, of course, there's other ways to play it, but that's the
Yeah,
best way to play drafts this year. Just because I mean, respective, like the tight ends are so cheap. They're just so
right.
cheap for elite tight ends.
It's funny if you're not getting some of these elite tight ends. We mentioned Sinnott as a guy you compare with Jaden
Mhm.
Daniels. Are there other late tight ends you'd be considering? Like not considering, but are there other late tight ends you're excited about?
Yeah, even in the pre-draft stuff, Juwan Johnson, I think Juwan Johnson and Jatavian Sanders are my two highest drafted. I mean, I
Hmm.
don't think Juwan Johnson is great, but for his price, I think he could have spike weeks.
Yeah,
Um, and that's pretty much it, honestly. Uh,
we got a grade from OG1
okay.
Kenobi. Not bad, guys. QB A minus, running back B plus, wide receiver B plus, would be
Mhm.
A, but lots of rookies. Tight end A. I'm happy with this grade. I mean, I think the lots of rookies at um, wide receiver is a feature, not a bug, but we'll see.
Did you did you notice that we don't have a wide receiver that's past year two? I like
Yeah,
that.
well, that's the way to play it, I think.
Yeah.
Those are the years where you get wide receiver breakouts. So, I mean, if
Hmm.
you're not loading up on those guys, what are you doing?
Hmm. I had one more question I want to ask you for sure. I don't know how much longer you want to stay on,
Yeah,
but where is your cutoff for the elite tight ends this year? I know where mine is, but I think some people might include a couple guys that I do not include. Like where when you consider like bully tight ends, like what's your
sure.
cutoff?
I guess. Ooh. Well, it's tricky because I mean, I do love Brock Bowers, and he's going in the ninth round. I mean, I'd probably say there's a tier break um, between Kittle and Ingram.
Okay.
But I like Ingram. I'd still draft him. I like Bowers.
Mhm.
I'm even comfortable with like TJ Hawkinson.
Okay. Yeah, I go a little deeper. I thought most people were gonna go a little deeper because, like, Njoku, I'm a Browns
Yeah.
fan, and I've watched
Okay.
every and pretty much every game, and so I'm just kind of, like,
Mm-hmm.
suspect on him after watching him for 7 years just
Yeah.
because he just disappears so often.
Yeah.
But Bowers is, like, my cutoff where I'm like,
Yeah.
he's, like, the end right when I'm trying to do, like, bully tight end builds, like, that's kinda where I consider the line is at Bowers. I like Ingram a
Yeah.
lot, honestly. I don't think he's gonna do what he did last year, but I also don't think he's gonna fade away to the point where
Yeah.
he's not gonna be productive.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, yeah, Bowers, I think should be going earlier than he is. Like he's maybe undervalued by 2 rounds.
Mhm.
So I do have him in that kind of tier of elite tight ends, but yeah, it's tricky because I mean, I don't know if I would consider Jake Ferguson an elite tight end, even though
No.
he's going ahead of Bowers.
Is he? I didn't
Yeah.
know that. I guess
Yeah.
I just glossed right over. Like, Jake Ferguson, ew. Brock Bowers, yes.
Right. Yeah. Ingram and Ferguson are going in the 7th and 8th round, and then Bowers is the first pick in the 9th. Currently, it looks like.
Cool. So I'm just kinda as I'm just, I'm kinda looking at these undrafted guys. Is there
Yeah.
anybody on here that you think should be getting drafted that could be flying up boards at the end of or even the middle at some point this draft season? Like Garendo, he's a guy that I've
Mhm.
kind of late round I've been toying with picking up.
Yeah. Yeah,
Shipley,
Garindo's interesting.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Shipley is probably the name that I would point to as somebody who, I mean, I don't even I expect you know, by draft season he'll be at least in the 15th round.
Mhm.
I don't think he'll continue getting undrafted. I think Saquon's going way too early as well.
Yeah, me too.
Saquon's somebody I'm pretty much out on at his price for sure. I mean, if he were end of the 3rd round, even then I probably wouldn't be drafting him. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think that Shipley should be going way earlier.
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to earlier that my but I didn't want to really talk about it, but now I'm ready to open up and be vulnerable. My two pre-draft highest owned running backs were Kenneth Gainwell number 1 and Will Shipley number 2, and both of them
Oh.
could monumentally just destroy me. And I mean, I just knew that I didn't really buy into the Saquon is going to steal all the
Yeah.
work. So
Yeah.
that's why I was drafting Gainwell a lot because he was like late, especially after they signed Saquon. You know, he was the last round pick. I'm like, he has some talent, it's post type sleeper sort of breakout. But then, and I was drafting a ton of Shipley too because I thought he was underrated. Like his pro day numbers were really, really good. And now they're my two top down. So I guess my best thing is if something happens to him, maybe they split the load and they both get some some work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's tough. I have Gainwell on a lot of had him at like the end of the bench of a lot of dynasty teams and kind of have been holding on for a long time and finally decided in a lot of teams I should just let him go this year. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very excited for Shipley. And I mean, there are scenarios where I think both Shipley and Gainwell have value. Part of the problem with that offense, of course, is that Hurts vultures
Hmm.
so much running back value at the goal line.
You
So
so my but sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, but
no, that's all right.
do you think Kellen Moore coming there is going maybe he can kind of break that where he might get some more work to the backs? Do you think that might be part of the Eagles,
Um,
thinking behind bringing him on is maybe he can maybe get Hurts to kind of dump off more?
I mean maybe, but I think
Yeah.
Hurts running behind that line is the most unstoppable play in football right now. So
Mhm.
I don't think they're going to go away from that, even though I don't think their
Yeah.
line's going to be as good
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
year as it was last year, obviously without Kelsey.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I like Shipley to be catching passes probably. I don't well. if you look at just in terms of like receiving fantasy points, I like him to outscore Barkley.
Ooh, hot takes to end it up.
Yeah. and we didn't even draft him on this team,
Yep.
despite that kind of take.
So that's why we will lose. That's why we will not win WrestleMania this year.
Yeah. All right. Anything else to touch on before we get out of here?
No, it was a lot of fun though.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of fun. I love this team. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe. I know the RotoViz channel is close to 3,000 subscribers, so you can help get us over that milestone. That would be awesome. And yeah, all the other YouTube stuff you need to do, and that would be great. So yeah, for Kevin Szafraniec, I'm Blair Andrews. Thanks so much for tuning in.